The winter wind blew hard through the city streets. People rushed past each other, hands in pockets, eyes down, coats wrapped tight. No one stopped, no one looked around, and sitting quietly on a cold piece of cardboard was a man with nothing. Name was Jake. He wore an old torn coat and shoes with holes in them. His hands were rough and red from the cold. Beside him sat a dirty cup with just a few coins inside. Some people walked past and dropped change. Most didn't even see him. Jake had been homeless for 3 years. He had no job, no house, no family. But he still had one thing, a single dollar, folded carefully in his pocket. Jake didn't beg much. He didn't shout or chase people. He just sat, quietly, day after day, hoping for something, anything to change. He often remembered the days. Before everything went wrong, he had once worked in a small shop. He had a wife. They used to cook together, laugh together, even plan for a family. Then the accident happened. One rainy night, a car crash took his wife's life. Jake couldn't handle the pain. He left his job, stopped talking to friends, and slowly disappeared from the world. The streets became his home. That day, Jake sat outside a busy train station. People moved fast, businessmen, students, parents, tourists. Jake held his cup and tried to smile. A young man dropped a few coins. A child offered him half a chocolate bar. A woman stared at her phone and almost stepped on his foot. Then he saw her, a young woman in her 20s. She was sitting on a bench, her face in her hands. Her shoulders were shaking. She looked lost. Jake watched for a while. Then he stood up slowly and walked toward her. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked gently. She looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. "I lost my wallet," she said. "I was supposed to take the train home. I have nothing now, not even a dollar." Jake stood still for a moment. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his last dollar. "It's not much," he said, "but it's yours." The girl looked shocked. "No, I can't take that from you. You need it more than I do." Jake smiled softly. "Maybe, but you need it now." He placed the dollar in her hand. She held it like it was gold. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Jake nodded. "It's just a dollar." But for her, it was everything. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked away. Jake watched her go. Then he returned to his spot and sat down. Now he had nothing, not even a dollar. That night, the city grew even colder. The streets emptied. The lights dimmed. Jake curled up under an old blanket behind a bakery that was closed for the night. His stomach growled, but he ignored it. He had learned how to sleep hungry. He looked up at the stars between the buildings. His body was cold, but inside, something felt warm. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had done something good. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but he didn't know. Someone was watching. Across the street, in a black car with tinted windows, a man sat in the back seat. He had seen the whole thing. The giving, the dollar, the kindness from someone who had nothing to offer. The man leaned forward and spoke to his driver. "Follow him. Find out who he is." Morning came. Jake woke up early, stretching slowly. His bones hurt from the cold concrete. His blanket was wet from the night dew, but he got up, folded the blanket, and placed it in his bag. As he walked back toward the train station, he saw something strange. A small white envelope was lying near where he had slept. He looked around. No one was nearby. He picked it up and opened it. Inside was a note that said only one sentence. "You changed everything." Jake stared at it. No money, no name, just the note. He looked around again. Still no one. Was it from the girl? Was it a joke? He didn't know. But something about those words stayed in his heart. He walked to his usual spot outside the train station and sat down. He placed his cup in front of him. No dollar now. No coins. Still, he sat and smiled. Then, after a few minutes, someone tapped his shoulder. He looked up. A tall man in a black coat stood before him. "I saw what you did yesterday," the man said. Jake looked confused. "What do you mean?" "The girl. The dollar. That was your last one, wasn't it?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah." The man smiled. "Come with me." Jake blinked. "Why?" The man said. "Because someone wants to meet you." Jake hesitated. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he stood up and followed. Jake sat in the back seat of a black car. The seats were soft, warmer than anything he'd felt in years. He looked out the window, watching the streets go by. For a moment, he wondered if this was all a trick, a setup. Maybe the man in the black coat had made a mistake. But deep down, Jake knew something was happening, something bigger than he could understand. The man driving didn't speak, just nodded politely when Jake asked where they were going. Jake looked down at his clothes, old, dirty, torn. He felt out of place in a car so clean. He whispered to himself, "Why me?" 10 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a small, fancy cafe. People in suits sat near windows, sipping coffee. Everything smelled of bread and fresh flowers. Jake hesitated. I shouldn't go in there," he said. The man in the black coat smiled. "Trust me, you're invited." Jake stepped out slowly. As he walked toward the door, he caught people staring. Some looked confused, some looked annoyed, but he kept walking. Inside, it was warm and bright. Soft music played. The man led Jake to a table in the back, then said, "Wait here." Jake sat down, feeling nervous. He didn't touch anything. His hands were still cold. He looked at the spoon, the napkin, the little vase with a yellow flower. He had not been inside a cafe for over 3 years. Then he saw her, the young woman from the train station. Her hair was tied back neatly. She wore a clean white jacket. She looked different, calm, confident, but her eyes, those were the same. She walked toward him with a smile. Jake stood up awkwardly. "Hello?" he said. She smiled. "Hi. Do you remember me?" He nodded. "You were crying. You lost your wallet. I gave you my dollar," she said. "Your last one." Jake shrugged. It wasn't much. She sat down in front of him. It was everything. A moment later, another person joined them. An older man, tall, serious, wearing a dark suit and golden watch. His face looked powerful, but kind. Jake stood again. "Who's this?" The woman smiled. "Jake, this is my father." The man extended his hand. "Mr. Carter." Jake shook it slowly. I don't understand." Mr. Carter sat down and folded his hands. "My daughter came home yesterday crying, but not because she was sad. Because she met someone who reminded her that kindness still exists in this world." Jake looked down, unsure what to say. "She told me how you gave her your last dollar." Mr. Carter continued. "No questions, no hesitation. You didn't know who she was, and yet, you gave her everything you had." Jake stayed quiet. "Why did you do it?" Mr. Carter asked. Jake took a breath. "Because I know what it feels like to have nothing," he said. "And sometimes, even a small help can mean the world." Mr. Carter nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we brought you here." The waiter came over with food, eggs, toast, pancakes, fruit, coffee. Jake stared at it all. "Is this for me?" The woman smiled. "Yes, please eat." Jake hesitated, then picked up a piece of toast. His hands shook a little. The taste made him close his eyes. It was warm, soft, real. "I forgot what this feels like," he whispered after breakfast. Mr. Carter opened a small folder and placed it on the table. Inside was a clean set of documents. Jake's name, a medical checkup appointment, a hotel keycard, and a bank card. Jake stared in shock. I can't take this," he said. "This is too much." Mr. Carter shook his head. "It's not enough." Jake looked confused. "Why are you helping me?" Mr. Carter leaned forward. "Because people like you are rare. You remind us that character doesn't depend on money. It comes from the heart. And I believe that anyone who gives everything for a stranger deserves a second chance." Jake's eyes filled with tears. He hadn't cried in years, not even when he lost his job, not even when he lost his wife. But now, a simple offer of kindness broke him. He wiped his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." That evening, Jake stood outside a fancy hotel, clean glass doors, bellboys, gold signs. He looked down at his shoes, then at the keycard in his hand. "Maybe they'll throw me out," he thought. But when he walked in, the man at the counter greeted him with a smile. "Mr. Jake, welcome. Your room is ready." Jake stepped into the elevator like he was entering another world. On the 6th floor, he found room 608. He slid the card. The door opened. Inside, the room smelled fresh. White bed sheets, a hot shower, a small basket of snacks, a note on the pillow. "You matter." Jake sat on the bed and touched the pillow. It was soft. Too soft. He got up, walked to the bathroom, and looked at himself in the mirror. Hair messy, face rough, clothes still dirty. He turned on the tap and let the water run warm. That night, he showered for the first time in weeks, and he cried again. But just before sleeping, he noticed something strange. On the table beside the bed was another envelope. He opened it. Inside was a message in handwriting he didn't recognize. "This is only the beginning. Tomorrow, we talk about your future." Jake stared at it. His future. He didn't know what that meant, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. Morning sunlight peeked through the hotel curtains. Jake opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. The soft bed, the warm sheets, the silence. Then it all came back. The girl, the dollar, the cafe, the rich man's offer. And now, here he was, in a beautiful hotel room, his stomach full, and his body clean. Jake sat up slowly. On the table was a fresh set of clothes. Dark jeans, a clean white shirt, a warm gray coat. Next to the clothes lay a note. "Breakfast is waiting downstairs." Then, the real conversation begins. Mr. Carter. Jake smiled weakly. It still felt unreal. He had nothing just 2 days ago. Now, someone cared enough to give him a second chance. Downstairs, Jake entered the hotel cafe. He felt awkward in his new clothes, like he was pretending to be someone he wasn't. But when he walked in, 2 familiar faces greeted him with warm smiles. Elena, the girl from the bench, and Mr. Carter, her powerful father. "Good morning, Jake," Elena said cheerfully. Mr. Carter added, "You look sharp." Jake gave a small smile. "I feel like I borrowed someone else's life." They sat down, and the waiter brought a plate of eggs, toast, and hot coffee. Jake looked at Mr. Carter. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to ask, why me?" Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair. "I've spent my whole life building businesses, making money, meeting powerful people, but last week my daughter met someone who gave away his last dollar. Not for attention, not for gain, just out of kindness." Jake looked down. It was nothing. No, Alina said firmly. It was everything. Jake looked up at her. She continued, after I got home that night, I told my father everything. He decided we should find you. We didn't expect to discover your story. Mr. Carter placed a folder on the table. Jake opened it. Inside were copies of documents, his job history, the accident report from the night his wife died, even hospital records from years ago. He froze. You looked into my life. Mr. Carter nodded, only to understand what brought you here. Jake's voice turned quiet. You had no right. Mr. Carter leaned forward. Jake, I wasn't trying to control you. I wanted to see the truth. And the truth is you didn't give up on life. Life gave up on you. Jake sat back, silent. His hands trembled slightly. I lost everything, he said, and no one cared. I cared, Alina whispered. He looked at her. She added, I could have walked away that day, but I didn't, because something told me. Your story wasn't finished yet. Mr. Carter said, I want to offer you something more, not charity, not pity. Jake asked, then what? Mr. Carter smiled. A job, a fresh start, something that gives you purpose again. Jake blinked. What kind of job? Mr. Carter opened another folder. Inside was a security ID card with Jake's photo on it. Night shift guard, he said. At one of our research facilities. Light work, good pay, quiet hours. It's yours if you want it. Jake stared at the card. His hands shook as he picked it up. I haven't worked in 3 years, he said. What if I mess it up? You won't, Alina said. We believe in you. That night, Jake stood in front of a tall glass building with a glowing blue sign. Carter, Technologist, South Tower. He wore a black security uniform. His hair was trimmed. His beard was neat. His hands still felt unsure, but inside, something had changed. He wasn't invisible anymore. He walked in and nodded at the main desk. The receptionist greeted him kindly and showed him to the security room. There, a young trainer explained the rules. Check each floor every hour. Watch the cameras, stay alert. Easy stuff. Jake nodded. He sat down and looked at the screens. For the first time in years, he felt like someone again. Around midnight, Jake made his first walk through the building. Everything was quiet. He checked each floor, one by one. When he reached the 6th floor, he paused. The hallway was dark. Then he saw it. A shadow, quick movement, far end of the corridor. Jake's heart jumped. Was it a thief? He stepped forward slowly, gripping his flashlight. He called out. No answer. He reached the end of the hallway and found a door slightly open. He pushed it gently. The room inside was empty, except for a tablet sitting on the desk. On the screen was a message. Jake stepped closer to read it. You passed the first test. He blinked, then turned to see Mr. Carter standing in the hallway behind him. Jake was confused. What is this? Mr. Carter walked in calmly. You did exactly what I hoped you'd do. You didn't panic. You followed the noise. You didn't run. You moved with care. Jake looked lost. So, there was no thief. Mr. Carter smiled. No, it was me. A test. Jake's jaw clenched. You set me up. I tested you, Mr. Carter corrected, because I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you a mission. Jake stood still. Mr. Carter looked serious. I want to create something new. A program that helps men and women like you, people who've been broken, forgotten, lost. Jake stared at him. I don't want to be a symbol, he said. Mr. Carter replied, you already are. Back at the hotel, Jake stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Alina stepped beside him, holding 2 mugs of coffee. I heard you passed, she said. Jake nodded. I still don't get it. You don't have to, she said softly. Just live it. Help others. Be the man you already are. Jake looked at her. Why are you doing all this? She smiled. Because someone gave me hope when I had none, and I want to return the favor. It was a cold Friday night. Rain fell slowly over the city. Street lights flickered. Cars passed with wet tires hissing over puddles, and Jake stood alone at the new outreach center. Locking the front gate, he had stayed late packing food boxes, folding donated clothes, and writing thank you notes with kids who now called him Uncle Jake. The place had grown fast, too fast, and not everyone liked that. Jake didn't know it yet, but someone was watching him. Earlier that day, Mr. Carter had warned him, Jake, we've been getting calls. Some city officials, some business owners, they're not happy about what we're doing. Jake had raised an eyebrow. Why? They say we're bringing homeless people into their neighborhoods. They're scared. They're angry. Jake looked down. But we're helping. No, Mr. Carter said. But not everyone sees hope the way we do, Alina added. People fear what they don't understand. Jake nodded. I'm not stopping, he said. Let them call. Let them watch. Mr. Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. Just be careful. And now, alone in the rain, Jake felt something strange. Not fear exactly, but pressure. The kind that comes before something goes wrong. He turned off the final light and walked out the back. That's when he saw it. The back window had been smashed. Glass was scattered on the ground. Jake's heart raced. He pulled out his phone, but there was no signal in the alley. He stepped inside carefully. The storage room had been trashed. Boxers ripped open, food spilled everywhere. A message was spray painted on the wall. Stay out of our streets. Jake stared at the words. He clenched his fists, but didn't move. He took a deep breath, then slowly pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. It was the first thank you letter he ever received from a boy named Mason, who wrote, "You saw me when no one else did. You saved my life." Jake held it tight. He wasn't going to let fear win. The next morning, police arrived, cameras too. The story hit the news outreach center. Vandalized. Alina stood beside Jake in front of reporters. "What will you do now?" one reporter asked. Jake looked into the lens. He didn't shout, he didn't cry. He simply said, "We'll clean the glass," and open the doors again. But behind the cameras, Jake was exhausted. That night, he sat in the empty building, staring at the broken window, now covered with cardboard. Alina came in quietly and sat beside him. "You okay?" she asked. Jake shook his head slowly. "I'm tired," he whispered. She placed a warm cup of tea in his hand. "You're allowed to be." Jake looked at her. "I just wanted to help one person, but now it's bigger than me, and I feel like if I stop it'll all fall." Alina leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then don't stop," she said softly, "but don't carry it alone either." 2 days later, something happened that shook everything again. Jake received a call at 2:13 a.m. The voice was shaky. "Jake, it's Logan. They took my brother." Jake sat up straight. "What? Who took him?" "I don't know. Men in black jackets. They grabbed him while we were sleeping behind the store. I tried to stop them." "Where are you?" Jake asked. "Under the old bridge. Please help me." Jake didn't wait. He jumped into the center's van and sped through the city. The rain had returned. Streets were nearly empty. He found Logan shaking in the shadows, holding his brother's torn backpack. "They drove that way," Logan said, pointing down a dark street. Jake stared into the distance, then gently grabbed the boy's hand. "I'll find him," he promised. "I swear," with help from Alina and a few trusted contacts. Jake found out a private security group hired by a local businessman had been sweeping up homeless kids and teens to clean the streets. They didn't hurt them, but they scared them, moved them, pushed them far away from the city, out of sight, out of mind. Jake's blood boiled. He knew what fear did to a young soul. He knew the damage of being thrown away, so he did what he never expected to do. He walked into the city council building and spoke in front of a live meeting. He stood tall, wearing a plain black jacket, his voice clear and strong. "I was on your streets. I was thrown away. And now I help the people you ignore." Some council members rolled their eyes. Others looked curious. Jake continued, "You think hiding them makes your city better? You think silence means peace?" He pulled out a photo. It was Logan, tiny, thin, brave. This boy's brother was taken in the middle of the night. "My men, you allowed to do it." One councilwoman leaned forward. "And what do you want from us?" Jake stepped closer. "I want protection for the voiceless. I want real help, not fear." The room went silent. Then, slowly, people started clapping. Not everyone, but enough. That night, Mr. Carter called him. "You shook them," he said. Jake laughed softly. "Good. They needed to be shaken. We're getting attention now. More reporters, more eyes." Jake paused. "Good or bad?" Mr. Carter smiled on the phone. "It depends on what you do next." Jake's eyes focused. "I already know." The old building was quiet. Dust floated in the sunlight, coming through broken windows. Cracks ran along the walls. The floor creaked. Cobwebs danced in corners, but to Jake, it looked perfect. "This is it," he whispered. Beside him, Alina smiled. "It's a mess." Jake nodded. "Yeah, but it's our mess." After the city council meeting, everything changed. The media picked up Jake's story, from homeless to hero. One man's fight for the forgotten people across the city started noticing. Some sent food, others gave blankets. A few even offered their time. Jake didn't want fame. He wanted movement. So, when Mr. Carter offered to buy an empty building for a youth shelter, Jake said yes. "This place won't just be walls," he said. "It'll be hope." Within 2 weeks, work began. Volunteers painted. Electricians fixed wiring. Donated beds arrived. Second-hand chairs, rugs, books. Jake was there every day, painting, lifting, fixing. Logan helped too, carrying boxes and telling jokes. Other kids began showing up, drawn by the word on the street. Jake's building something, and it's real. One night, while cleaning an upstairs room, Jake found an old mirror. He wiped off the dust and looked at himself. His beard was trimmed, his eyes brighter, his back straighter. "I look different," he said softly. Alina stood behind him in the doorway. "That's because you are." Jake turned. "I still feel like that man sitting on the sidewalk." She stepped closer. "You are, but now you're also the man who stood back up." The shelter opened quietly. No grand ceremony, just a simple wooden sign above the door. Hope House. Jake stood at the entrance with Alina and Mr. Carter by his side. A few kids walked in nervously carrying bags, wearing old clothes, looking down. Jake welcomed them like family. "No rules tonight," he smiled. "Just rest." One of the boys burst into tears after his first warm shower. Another girl hugged her pillow like it was treasure, and in the hallway, someone had written a message in chalk. "Thank you, Jake." The news spread again. More donations, more support, but not everyone was cheering. One morning, Jake found a note taped to the shelter door. "Stop pretending, there'll always be trash." Jake didn't flinch. He crumpled the note and threw it away, then opened the door and welcomed 3 more teens inside. Jake didn't want to just save people, he wanted to lift them. He started offering workshops: how to write a resume, how to speak with confidence, how to dream again. Each night ended with a circle. Everyone sat down, shared a story, laughed, cried, listened. Sometimes Jake would speak, other times he'd just sit and hold space. One night, Logan raised his hand. "I used to think I was nothing," he said. "Now I know I'm something." Jake smiled, eyes misty. "That's all I ever wanted." Soon, Jake began getting letters. One was from a teacher. "3 of your shelter kids are now in my classroom. Their eyes shine brighter than most." Another came from a man in another city. "I saw your story. I was homeless too. You reminded me who I used to be." But the one that hit Jake hardest was short. "You gave away your last dollar, and it turned into hundreds of lives. Thank you." Late one evening, Jake walked through Hope House alone. He passed sleeping children, whispered prayers, and warm rooms. He walked into the kitchen and turned on the light. There on the table was a small box. Inside, "A note for you," and under the note was his original dollar bill, old, wrinkled, but taped together carefully. Jake froze. Jake froze, then slowly picked it up. On the back, someone had written, "This started everything." He didn't know how it returned. Maybe the girl, maybe Alina, maybe someone else, but it didn't matter. Jake folded it gently and placed it in his wallet. It was no longer just a dollar, it was a symbol. It started with a missed phone call, then 2, then a full day without a single word from Jake. At first, the volunteers thought he was resting. Then, as the sun went down and his room stayed empty, everyone started to worry. Alina stood in the Hope House kitchen, holding her phone tight in her hand. "I've called him 5 times, she said. No answer. Logan sat on the floor, eyes wide with fear. He never leaves without telling someone. Mr. Carter rushed in from the hallway. "The front desk hasn't seen him since last night. He didn't take the van. His wallet and phone are still in his room." Elena's voice shook. "That's not like him. He's missing," Logan whispered. And suddenly, Hope House felt cold. That night, a search began. Volunteers checked shelters, hospitals, even train stations. Alina walked street after street, calling Jake's name through the rain. Logan and 2 older boys printed flyers with Jake's photo. "Missing Jake, last seen outside Hope House." News channels picked it up fast. "City's homeless hero vanishes without a trace." The whole city watched. People came to Hope House in tears. Some brought candles. Others just stood in silence. No one could understand how someone who had given so much could suddenly disappear. 3 days passed, no sign, no clue, just a hole where Jake had been. Hope House stayed open, but the laughter was gone. The stories at night turned into quiet prayers. And in his room, the small dollar bill Jake once gave away sat on the desk, untouched. On the 4th night, Alina sat alone in Jake's office. She held his old coat in her hands. It still smelled like paint and coffee. She closed her eyes. "Please come back," she whispered. Then just as the tears filled her eyes, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered quickly. "Hello." "Hello." A voice on the other end. Quiet, weak Alina. Her heart stopped. "Jake, where are you?" He spoke slowly. "I'm okay, but I need help." Within minutes, she was in Mr. Carter's car, racing toward the old part of the city. Jake had told her a location, an alley near the docks, a place no one goes anymore. When she arrived, her breath caught in her chest. There he was, sitting on the ground. Bruised, tired, but alive. She ran to him, falling to her knees. "What happened?" she cried. "Why didn't you call? Why did you leave?" Jake looked at her with red eyes. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "I was on my way to the shelter that night. I saw a boy hurt, crying. I followed him into an alley. But then someone hit me from behind." He touched the back of his head, wincing. "They took me, locked me in an old basement. Said people like me were ruining the city." Alina gasped. "Who?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know. They wore masks. But they said they'd been watching Hope House. They said I was making the city weak." Alina clenched her fists. Jake looked away. "I thought I was going to die there." She touched his arm gently. "You're safe now." Jake's voice cracked. "I just wanted to help." Back at Hope House, the moment Jake walked through the doors, the whole building lit up with cheers and tears. Kids ran to hug him. Volunteers cried. Even Mr. Carter wiped his eyes. Logan stood in front of him, trembling. "I thought we lost you." Jake knelt down. "You'll never lose me, Logan. Not if I can help it." After Jake returned, the city reacted, stronger than ever. Donations tripled. Lawyers came forward offering to investigate the attack. The mayor visited Hope House personally. "Man gave us back our conscience," she said, "and now we protect him." But Jake, he didn't want revenge. He wanted change. 1 week later, he stood in front of the press again. Same black jacket, same quiet strength. "I was taken by people who are afraid of kindness," he said. "But let me be clear, no threat will stop me. Not now, not ever." He held up the old dollar bill in his hand. "This is still with me, because this isn't just paper, this is proof that giving, even when you have nothing, can build a world worth living in." That night, Hope House had its largest gathering ever. Families, teens, seniors, even a few police officers. Jake stood in the center and lit a candle. Then he passed the flame to Logan. Then Logan passed it on, one by one. 100 candles glowed. In the dark, silent, strong, unbreakable, hook ending. As Jake walked outside for air, he noticed a small box sitting by the gate. No name. He opened it slowly. Inside was a torn notebook. And a note. We tried to stop you. We failed. But your message reached the wrong people. They're coming. Be ready. Jake stood still. He looked up at the night sky. And whispered, let them come. Hope isn't afraid anymore. A week had passed since the note arrived at the gate. The one that warned, they're coming. Jake didn't tell the kids. Didn't want to scare them. But inside, he felt it. Something was building. Hope House had become more than a shelter. Now it was a movement. There were now 4 buildings. Over 120 people helped daily. Children were back in school. Families were reunited, and some of the same people who once lived on the streets now wore volunteer badges. The city had changed, but Jake knew. Not everyone liked that, and some still wanted to bring it all down. Late one evening, just after sunset, black vans pulled up outside Hope House. 3 of them, no sirens, no lights. Just silence. Volunteers stepped outside, confused. Alina looked out the window and froze. They're here, she whispered. Jake stepped outside slowly, his hands by his sides. The kids stood behind him, watching Mr. Carter arrive minutes later. In a separate car, he whispered to Jake, I made some calls. If this is who I think it is, we're ready. Jake nodded, heart pounding. Then, the van doors opened, but instead of masked men or weapons, people in uniforms stepped out. City staff, social workers, and a man in a blue suit holding a gold letter. He walked straight to Jake. You are Mr. Jake Simmons, he asked. Jake nodded. The man smiled. I have orders from the mayor. You are no longer under investigation. Jake blinked. What investigation? The man continued. A false complaint was filed. Someone tried to shut you down, but after public review, the city has decided instead to support you, not silence you. He handed Jake the letter. Jake opened it slowly. Inside was a formal offer. We invite you to lead the city's new Department of Community Outreach with full support, funding, and freedom to expand Hope House citywide. Jake just stood there, frozen. The crowd behind him erupted into cheers. Kids ran up and hugged his legs. Volunteers clapped. Alina cried. Jake's hand shook. He turned to Mr. Carter, whispering, I don't understand. Why now? Mr. Carter smiled. Because kindness spreads. And you, Jake, you started a fire no one can put out now. That night, Hope House held a celebration. Lights, music, laughter. The hall was full of people, from every walk of life, rich, poor, black, white, young, old. They weren't strangers anymore. They were family. Jake stood on the small stage with a microphone. He looked around the room and said, I gave my last dollar once. I thought I was helping someone else. But that moment saved me. He paused. Tears filled his eyes. They told me I was nothing, that I would never matter again. But one girl believed in me. Then her father did. Then all of you did. The room went quiet. Even the kids stopped moving. Hope is louder than hate, and love is stronger than fear. The whole room stood and clapped, not just for Jake, but for what he made them believe in. Later that night, as Jake stepped outside, for some air, a man stood in the shadows near the old bench by the tree. Jake walked toward him slowly. Can I help you? Jake asked. The man stepped forward, his face hidden under a hood. Then he pulled out something, a worn-out dollar bill. Jake's dollar. Jake froze. I gave that away years ago, he said softly. The man nodded. You did, to my sister. She passed it to me before she died. She said, if you ever lose yourself, find the man who gave me this. Jake's eyes filled with tears. She said you changed her. The man handed the dollar back to Jake. But I think it's yours now. You earned it back. Jake looked down at the bill. It was torn, faded, but powerful. He folded it gently, then looked at the man. Come inside, Jake said. You're home now.